After a seemingly normal dinner with friends, my girlfriend and I descended into chaos. "You're so fucking stupid," she yelled as I stood locked out of our apartment. Misunderstandings escalated, ending with me walking out as she threw my keys at me. How did it spiral so fast? Alright, I will attempt to explain this from both perspectives and include what was said by each party, along with relevant context from previous events when necessary. We intended to have dinner with a couple of friends after playing our weekly soccer game. We arrived significantly earlier than they did, so by the time they would have arrived, we would have nearly finished eating. She mentioned that we might not stay the entire time, to which I agreed. They arrived, got their food, and we engaged in conversation. I found myself drawn into a discussion with friend A. While she conversed with friend B while I was chatting with friend A, I shifted my foot and accidentally bumped into hers. We were sitting across from each other. I looked under the table, not realizing it was her foot, and I apologized. I resumed my conversation and she continued with hers. About 2 to 5 minutes later, I was distracted by my own conversation, so this is just a rough estimate. I felt her foot again. Assuming she was trying to get my attention, I paused my conversation with friend A to inquire what was happening, but she did not respond in a way that prompted me to engage further. I also do not clearly remember her reaction, but I recall being confused and somewhat dismissing it. As a side note, this second instance of her tapping my foot has completely slipped my mind, a detail that will be significant later. Sometime later, we departed. During the car ride home, we discussed how enjoyable the evening was. However, my girlfriend mentioned that she was not feeling well and was unsure of the reason. I dismissed it, thinking it was merely residual feelings from losing the soccer match, not wanting to probe further since when I inquired about it, I received an "I'm not too sure" in response. Upon arriving home, I went to unload the car while holding the keys. The soccer shoe bags were in the back seat, so I walked around the car to retrieve the dirty laundry from inside the bags. We leave our shoe bags and shoes in the car. I positioned myself in the back seat with my legs hanging outside when she stood by the car door and asked for the keys, which I handed to her. I returned to collect the laundry only to realize my wallet was missing, prompting me to search for it among the clutter in the back seat. During this time, my girlfriend began to walk away without realizing what I was doing, stating her intention to get the mail from the mailbox. We both live in separate apartment complexes. For some reason, I did not hear her, likely because my head was in the car and she was 20 to 30 feet away. She tried to alert me again, yet I still did not hear her. Finally, she raised her voice and all I caught was, "Get the mail." I shouted back, "One sec," since that's all I heard, and at that moment I finally located my wallet and started heading toward the apartment door. Upon arrival, I found the door locked and the lights off inside. Confused, I called her to ask why she had left the door locked, to which her response was, "You're so foolish," before abruptly hanging up. Connecting the dots, I waited for her to return and asked why she went to get the mail when I thought she had requested me to go instead. She replied, "Well, if you had been listening to me, you would have understood." I apologized for misinterpreting her request, but she did not respond, as I genuinely believed she had asked me to go get the mail when that was not the case. Once inside, I put the laundry away and began washing the dishes from earlier. She removed her socks and lay on the couch, scrolling through TikTok. After a while, I checked on her, noticing she appeared upset. I asked what was wrong, and she said, "I feel like you do not listen to me." Unaware of anything else occurring, I inquired if she wanted some time alone, to which she said yes, prompting me to go upstairs to make the bed and start the laundry. When I returned downstairs, she requested that I grab her ankles, but I misheard her as saying, "Rub my ankles." I went back upstairs to fetch lotion and was met with a very confused yet condescending, "What are you doing?" I explained that I was retrieving lotion to rub her ankles, but she clarified, "No, I said grab my ankles. Once again, you're not paying attention to what I say." She was experiencing numbness in her pinky toes and wanted me to shake her ankles to promote blood flow. Now extremely puzzled, I apologized once more for mishearing her, to which her response was, "I feel like you never listened to me." Now for some context, I struggle with defensiveness and previously had a problem with dishonesty, but I have made significant strides in regaining her trust and learning to manage my defensiveness. Additionally, I have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and am currently unmedicated, which complicates my ability to control my defensiveness when I feel attacked, leaving me confused about what is occurring. In my defensiveness, I reiterated to her that I misheard her about the ankle request and that I truly did not hear her about the mail request. She responded that it was nonsense and accused me of making excuses for my incompetence. We both descended into our worst selves, with her in accusatory mode insisting her point of view was the only valid one and anything else was incorrect, while I grew defensive, striving to explain my perspective without admitting fault. I asked her, albeit in an unkind tone, "Is this why you called me foolish earlier?" earning me a shrug and a look that seemed to say, "What do you think?" She accused me of being a liar, asserting it was nonsense, which led me to turn away, expressing that I was finished with the conversation if she continued to verbally belittle me. As I turned away while she continued to speak, she yelled where I was going. I reiterated that we could not have this conversation if all she did was be hostile and insult me. We had both agreed previously to step away when arguments escalated. Recognizing it was getting out of hand, I began to distance myself. Apparently too angry to relent, she followed me upstairs, asking, "Where are you going?" and insisting that it was rude to simply walk away, which I acknowledged, understanding I could have handled my retreat from the conversation more effectively. Nonetheless, I repeated that we would not be having this discussion at that moment. I walked downstairs to sit in the living room, and as I passed her on the staircase, she swung her Walla water bottle at me and hit me in the back. I am a smaller framed individual at 56, while she is 54 but surpasses me in nearly all physical strength. I nearly stumbled but maintained my balance and continued walking to the living room while once again stating that we were not discussing this now. At this point, she brought up the incident at the restaurant. She explained that she had hit my foot intentionally to get my attention and signal that she was ready to leave. Unbeknownst to me, she was referring to the second time, not the first, causing me confusion because I thought I was the one who had accidentally bumped her foot, prompting me to look under the table, see that I had contacted her foot, and apologize. She insisted more emphatically, raising her voice, that this was not the case, while I remained in denial about it having happened at all because I had forgotten. It was then that she clarified she was referring to the second instance when she had hit my foot on purpose, which had distracted me from my conversation. Slowly, that memory resurfaced, and I admitted I had not realized that was her intention, nor that she was indicating she was ready to leave. I responded with, "I didn't realize that was what you were doing," which elicited 2 points of contention from my girlfriend. 1. Do not pretend now, because 5 seconds ago you did not remember, and were vehemently denying it occurred because you become so defensive and cannot accept fault. 2. We have discussed similar situations before, so you should understand what to do to avoid embarrassing me publicly. I inquired why she had not raised this issue during the car ride home, as normally, following a social situation, if something I did upset her or vice versa, we address it immediately in private to avoid forgetting the details or harboring resentment over time. She said she forgot because the enjoyable conversations we had overshadowed it. God forbid I forget things. I acknowledged my understanding now that I knew her intent, yet in every prior situation we had discussed signaling, whether by squeezing my hand or tapping my leg 3 times, when she was prepared to leave or meant to signal something else, which we had also previously discussed before entering social events. She countered that she should not have to tell me and that I should just know that this was her intent, implying it should be understood, and that I should not require a verbal reminder every time such a situation arises. As a side note, this logic does not make much sense to me and breaks the pattern of pre-discussing these signals so that I know what to watch for. Additionally, we had sufficient time to discuss a signal to look for before our friends arrived, as they were almost 25 to 30 minutes late. After this, events became a blur to me. All I distinctly recall are the following points, not in chronological order. 1. Her calling me a liar and accusing me of fabricating things because I cannot acknowledge my faults, while in reality, I was merely trying to explain my perspective. I remarked that she was like a freight train, bulldozing everything in her path without caring to understand my viewpoint, which made me want to shut down and distance myself from her. 2. Her frustratively fiddling with the same water bottle she threw at me by slamming it into the sofa repeatedly. 3. My attempts to convey my perspective regarding her expectation that I should just know her signal disrupted the pattern we had established for over a year, which she rejected as excuses. 4. Her assertion that I never implement my therapist's advice and have not changed or matured and am still acting like a child at this moment. I tuned out of the conversation and ceased trying to handle the situation maturely. 5. Her stating, "When you act like this, it makes me want to slap that smug look off your face," when in reality my expression was entirely neutral. She has physically struck me in the past when enraged over something I did, whether justifiable or not, to which I replied, "Go ahead, you've already thrown your bottle at me." Following point 5, she stood up, took my keys from their holder and threw them at me, instructing me to leave because she could not be near me. Currently, I am drafting this from my apartment about an hour after the events transpired. I want to emphasize that we do not often engage in fights like this. Our disagreements 97% of the time do not escalate to yelling, throwing objects, or using insults. We generally maintain a very happy and healthy relationship and have recently contemplated engagement and marriage. We are also planning an overseas trip this summer for her to meet my extended family. This particular situation has left me feeling bewildered and puzzled, prompting me to seek external advice. Any comments, insights, or guidance would be greatly appreciated. In summary, we became embroiled in a conflict because she felt unheard. While I perceived it as a misunderstanding stemming from a genuine, I did not hear her situation. This misunderstanding led to her adopting a confrontational stance, labeling me a liar, insulting me, and throwing things at me, while I descended into a defensive posture to articulate my perspective, which she dismissed as fabrications. In the end, I was expelled from the situation. What might we do differently to de-escalate? Story 2. Months after I broke Adrian's heart, I'm still haunted. I let my doubts ruin something beautiful. Fresh off self-destruction at 21, I fled love, and now, I just wish I could be that person for them again. Is it too late to fix what I shattered? This will be a long one. First of all, I will not deny that I acted completely wrongly in this situation. The entire circumstance was chaotic, and it truly did not have to be that way. I simply kept getting in my own way. About 6 months ago, I met the individual in question. Let's refer to them as Adrian through a friend. I had just turned 21 at that time and was emerging from one of the worst years I have ever experienced. For context, some intense familial conflict unearthed old, unresolved traumas that I had long buried, which I addressed by immersing myself in alcoholism. I lost nearly all of my friends, my communities, and hurt people in ways that I am still grappling with today. I was filled with anger and despair and engaged in self-destructive behavior. I will not defend it. I should have sought help, but the further I fell, the more people turned their backs on me. I felt terribly, terribly alone and kept reverting to the bad habits I had learned to rely on. Coupled with this was the confusion regarding my sexuality, and by the end of it, I felt completely unrecognizable to myself. I grew to loathe myself. Thoughts of dying became frequent. Thankfully, this turmoil did not last. With the assistance of some friends, whom in hindsight I took completely for granted, I gained control over my relationship with alcohol and extricated myself from the cycle of self-destruction. I removed myself from the environments that exacerbated my issues and managed to find some stability. This was around a year ago. While I would not claim to be healed, I am at least stable and in a much, much better place than I was then. However, some wounds take longer to heal than others. One aspect of my self-destruction involved a girl I knew at that time. She was a couple of years older than me, incredibly intelligent, beautiful, funny, and charming, the whole package really. At some point, I began to obsess over her. I feel that if it were not for what I was experiencing at that time, it would have simply been a normal crush. However, I was seeking relief from it all, and somehow I convinced myself that if I were with her, things might improve. It was an absurd notion, but it took root in my mind and grew like a parasite. Google limerence. It essentially describes what transpired. After I was confronted about it and it dissipated, I felt utterly disgusted with my behavior, the way I fixated, how I would only ever talk about wanting to be with her, and how I fabricated scenarios to get close to her. I frightened myself. I felt my love had transformed me into a monster. Remember this, it will be significant later. Returning to Adrian, we met through a friend about 6 months ago, near the beginning of the semester. Both Adrian and my friend were freshmen at the time, while I was a junior. Adrian and I seemed to immediately connect. They often led our conversations, but they made a genuine effort to listen to me and include me, to make me feel wanted and heard. We had many shared interests. We appreciated similar media, held comparable opinions and beliefs, and were even contemplating similar paths in life. They seemed really cool to me. From the outset, I liked them a lot, and it appeared to be mutual. We eventually went with a group of friends to watch a movie, during which Adrian and I sat together. We joked and laughed the entire time, and afterward I walked them back to their dormitory. We exchanged phone numbers, and I thought that would be the end of it. Later, however, I received a text from Adrian stating that their friends had backed out on going out with them. They mentioned they would likely go out anyway. I became worried for them, being small, young, alternative femme. I did not want anything to happen to them, and I was somewhat eager to engage in some welcome week festivities myself, so I decided to accompany them. We met at their place, pre-gamed and chatted, and eventually went to a party. The gathering was somewhat dull, so we left and ended up at a fraternity house. We stayed there for a couple of hours. By the end, we were intoxicated. My apartment was nearby, so I suggested we return to my place for drinks. I did not have a plan or anything, I was just a bit tired. They agreed and we went back, had a couple of mixed drinks, and put on a movie. We sat on the couch and they wrapped a blanket around us. This is where my memory starts to blur. I do not recall how it happened, but the next thing I knew, we were passionately kissing. We moved to my room, tidied up a bit, and had sex. Eventually, morning arrived and they left. We arranged a coffee date for later that week. I wanted to make something genuine out of it. I truly felt a connection there and I could not stop thinking about them. Following the recent turmoil I had endured, it felt like my first victory in a while, the inception of something beautiful. However, as fate would have it, I caught a terrible flu the next day that left me ill for weeks. We postponed the date, but I was still battling whatever had afflicted me and I was really out of sorts. They seemed a bit off too. Maybe they were simply nervous, or perhaps it was due to other matters. I later learned they had some issues with their roommate at that time, which could explain it. Regardless, I left the meeting feeling uneasy and began second-guessing the entire situation, pondering if they regarded it as merely a hookup. I still had feelings for them though. I knew I wanted them. I felt butterflies whenever I thought of them, but I decided to leave it in their hands to see how they would respond. Then outside influences came into play. The friend group I was spending a lot of time with began discussing age gaps extensively due to an 18-year-old friend of a friend's relationship with a 23-year-old. They all seemed to concur that anyone over the age of 20 dating someone that young is in the wrong. Now, I did not agree entirely, but I did not fully disagree either. I believe both parties are adults and should be free to make their own decisions, but those years do hold significance, and many factors need to be considered: goals, life stages, maturity levels, etc. However, they appeared adamant that it was wrong no matter what, and I started to worry about how a relationship with Adrian might be perceived by our friends and others. Moreover, I allowed my personal experiences to cloud my judgment. I had been in a year-and-a-half-long long-distance relationship during my freshman and sophomore years. After high school, it shifted almost entirely online. We managed to meet in person once or twice, but it was a rare occurrence, especially considering she was attending school on the other side of the country. The relationship began to unravel around the same time as my previous struggles surfaced, which did not assist matters. After some time to process it, I ended up feeling I had wasted a lot of time in that relationship, causing me to miss numerous opportunities for exploration and growth. I projected these feelings onto Adrian. I did not want to waste their time or leave them feeling stunted as I did. This connects to another factor: my self-confidence. I still had not regained high self-esteem after my past behavior, and I feared that once Adrian truly got to know me, they would eventually come to despise me. I did not believe I deserved their affection, and I should not have had it. Perhaps that was selfish of me to decide that for them. Nonetheless, I did. Then there was the lingering memory of my last obsession. I did not want them to become like that, and I did not want to love too fiercely and overwhelm them with it. I feared my capability to love. This, among other issues, led me to choose to let the whole situation fade away. But fate had different plans. 2 months later, I was out with some friends when I received a text. It was Adrian, the first contact in a while. We began chatting. They were looking for something to do, so afterwards I invited them over to hang out again for a movie. I met them at their dorm once more, and we returned to my place, which was not far. However, when we got upstairs, my roommate and his boyfriend were on the couch. Therefore, we opted to retreat to my room to watch the movie on my laptop. On my bed, predictably, we ended up being intimate again. Afterwards, we lay together, conversing. I do not recall exactly what was asked or what was said on either side, but the essence was that they requested to be exclusive, and I offered a non-committal response that came across as wanting something casual. They appeared confused and hurt by this. Why would they not? I attempted to clarify my response, apologizing and trying to help them understand my skewed view of why it would not work, but it merely sounded like excuses. Eventually, they fell asleep. I could not. I lay awake all night feeling like the worst person alive. They felt safe around me, and I shattered that for no valid reason, and the entire time I wished I had the courage to express my true feelings. The sun rose again and they woke up. We chatted, almost as if nothing went wrong. I told them I still wanted them in my life despite the incident. I walked them back to their dorm and we parted ways. A month passed, we had our winter break, and the weight of my actions hit me all at once. I realized what I had thrown away and how I had hurt them. I decided to make amends, to step up and be the boyfriend they deserved. After our return from break, I asked them out properly to dinner and a movie at the theater, mind you. They replied affirmatively but mentioned they were kind of starting to see someone, so it would need to be just as friends. I was taken aback. I truly did not know how to respond. I was at work when I received their message, so I chose to wait until the end of my shift to reply. This ended up appearing as though I had left them on read, implying that I only wanted sex. Consequently, they blocked me. The messages were over Instagram. I suspected they may have blocked me, and I found I could not message them. I did not know until they informed me, so I reached out via text to indicate that I was fine being friends and to clarify why it took me so long to respond. They unblocked me and left the door open for a friendship between us if I desired. That was 3 months ago now. I still have not replied. I did not know what to say, and I still do not know if it is worth saying anything at this point. I want them in my life, but I still do want them romantically. I have seen them twice since they sent the text, once while I was out with another guy. The two appeared happy together. I do not think Adrian noticed me. The other time I was in the dorm waiting for a friend. I was staring down at my phone, and when I looked up, they were right in front of me. I froze. They were with a group, and it did not seem like a good moment to engage. I offered a timid hi and redirected my attention to my phone. I do not know what I perceived in their eyes when they looked at me. It seemed like sadness or possibly disappointment. I recognized that I did this to myself. I was a fool who did not know what he wanted. I sought something serious, something genuine, but when I had it, I psyched myself out and could not even recognize my true feelings until months later, far too late. I long to speak to them to at least clear the air, but I fear it is too far beyond repair at this juncture. It is agonizing. I do not want their memory to serve as a lesson for me. They opened themselves to me, and in the light I sought for so long, someone who genuinely seemed to care, I blinked. I hurt them, destroyed the sense of safety they felt around me, and naturally they sought solace elsewhere. And here I remain, tethered to the memory of what we shared, my mind tormented by what-ifs. I just wish I could be that person for them again. The person they believed I could be before I allowed doubt and insecurity to shatter the illusion. And the worst part is that the doubt and insecurity were the illusions obscuring my true feelings. I have no one to blame but myself. I am unsure what I am going to do. I do not know where to begin. Story 3. After 2 intense dates, Abyss ghosted me for 2 months while saying we'd make a great couple. When I finally confronted them, I got a cold "we aren't a match." I'm left wondering, was this emotional abuse or did I just care too much? I am writing this because I have been questioning everything that happened in a recent relationship. I was deeply affected, and even after taking time to reflect, I still do not know if what I experienced was simply emotional incompatibility or if it was, in fact, a form of emotional abuse. I am avoiding real names and using a throwaway account for obvious reasons. I met someone in October 2024, let us call them Abyss. We connected immediately. Even before meeting, Abyss was expressing how strong our connection was, how we would make a great couple, and flirting intensely. Then suddenly, a week later, they informed me that they had reconnected with their ex and were returning to them. I accepted this and wished Abyss well. Abyss then asked if we could be friends. I declined. They then said, if it does not work out with them, I will come back to you, followed by joking. Given my history of being used as a second option, this triggered me a lot, but I let it go, thinking I would never see this person again, and I forgot about them. A month later, Abyss reached out again, stating they wanted to resume things. I agreed. I told them how their joke had hurt me and they apologized sincerely, stating that if they did anything that hurt me, they would want to know this is important. We continued talking, the same energy returned, and I felt a strong connection before meeting this person. They were emotionally intelligent and we communicated our needs. I told them how we valued open communication. Yes, I realized that when someone says that, it is a sign to run. We went on our first date shortly afterward. The chemistry was incredible. We became physically and emotionally close. We had similar values, a really fun dynamic, and flirted a lot. Towards the end of the date, Abyss told me they had a lot of fun and asked me out on a second date that night. We kissed, and they expressed how they wanted to take things slow, discussing all kinds of dates they wanted to go on with me. We then said goodbye to each other. I was then met with a bit of silence. I understood it was a busy time. I did overthink a bit since we used to text frequently before, but I realized that maybe after a good first date, the texting frequency might decrease. A couple of weeks later, we went on another date, and after consuming alcohol, things became very physically and emotionally intense. We both opened up about trauma, our ideals about relationships, and our values. Abyss kept giving me these dreamy looks, said I was cute, professed that we had great compatibility, and everything felt genuine. I also communicated to them that I was not comfortable with sex unless we were dating, and Abyss respected that. Everything about the night felt as if something was building toward a relationship. I began to fall hard for them without even realizing it. I tried to suppress that feeling a bit because it felt a bit too soon, but it kept coming back. Soon after, Abyss began to become distant. They said they were busy. I understood it was a busy time. I stopped initiating texts and delayed our third date. I kept giving them space. It did feel a bit off because the silence was deafening, in stark contrast to how it had been when we initially started texting. Then Abyss informed me they would be flying back home for 2 months and needed complete silence during that time. They asked if I could wait for them. I agreed. There were no texts, no updates, nothing. Initially, we decided we could stay in touch digitally, but the silence became overwhelming and I convinced myself they were busy. I attempted to text with space, sending one message and waiting for a response, which came in the span of 8 to 14 business days. I messaged Abyss just once, stating that I missed them. Abyss replied, "I am not ignoring you, I will see you when I am back." Then I heard nothing again. They had informed me that after a month they would be a bit freer. I waited during that time, but the silence continued. I texted them 2 days after the period they indicated they would become available, and Abyss said, "Still have a lot going on. I will see you once I return. But for another month until I return, it will be complete silence." Normally, I would consider this behavior a red flag, but since they provided me with a hard deadline, I thought perhaps there was a legitimate reason, so I left them alone. I even mentioned that I would not be okay with complete silence if we moved forward, and they said they understood. Waiting was hard and draining, but given what we once shared, I thought it was worth waiting for them, as they displayed emotional intelligence. The day before Abyss returned, I asked them about meeting, and they said, "Before we meet, let us talk." Being the overthinker I am, I spiraled a bit but told myself that everything was going to be fine. I later reached out to inquire if they had returned and if they were okay, but I was met with silence for the next 5 days. I started worrying that I had been ghosted. I repeatedly conveyed to them how being left in silence was hurting me and requested that they respond. I was met with silence again despite calls and texts. The next day, I broke down. I sent Abyss a message saying I could not deal with the silence any longer. I respectfully informed them that if they did not respond by a certain time, I would take it as my sign to walk away. I apologized if it came across as an ultimatum. Abyss responded just before the deadline I had set, providing cold, emotionless closure. They said they had too much going on. They made it clear that they would be busy, stated we were not a match, called me out for setting an ultimatum, and wished me luck moving forward. I felt hurt. I waited patiently. I waited with hope. I had expectations and I lashed out once over text. It was not abusive. I told them how their silence and actions felt cruel and manipulative. I articulated what they did and how abandoned I felt. They immediately called me and cried. They told me that I was not close enough for them to share what was going on. They said they had already planned to end things but did not know how, which was the reason behind the silence and how my words had hurt them. I apologized mid-call, but they hung up. We then exchanged texts, where they told me how great I was, how we were wasted potential, how if the timing were different, and if I had not lashed out and hurt them, they might reconsider, and advised me to be careful with my words. I felt immense guilt. I felt like I had ruined something beautiful because I could not wait. I could not sleep, I cried a lot, and I suffered for 10 days. Finally, I sent them a message where I apologized for how I expressed myself. I took full responsibility, informing them that I was not asking to restart, but if they ever felt emotionally safe with me again, even months later, I would be open to rebuilding. They informed me they were not emotionally in a place for a relationship but would reach out in the future if they felt differently. I clung to that hope. I spiraled over and over but could not let go. This person had reached out once, which raised my expectations. However, I could not function properly because of that. I eventually came to realize it was unhealthy and sent them another message a week later stating we should not wait forever. Life is short. Things change, logistics change, and I did not want to regret not fighting for someone I genuinely cared about. Otherwise, it would be best for me to move on and not wait. They replied saying it was best for us to move on, that they had feelings at first but lost them, felt too much too soon and pulled back without informing me. They told me how my words had hurt them but that they forgave me. They stated they had healed but that granting me another chance would be disrespectful to themselves. They also informed me how they would have considered it if I had not lashed out at them. Now, I was just another person they had gone on 2 dates with and nothing more. I somewhat pleaded with them to reconsider, lost in my emotions, but was met with cruelty and indifference. I broke down completely. That devastated me. I was sitting with the weight of having lashed out and ruining something I wanted so badly, feeling erased for no reason. I sent one final message a week after my emotions settled, not to win them back but to achieve personal closure. I expressed everything I felt, that I was kind, patient, and respectful of their space, even after their silence and sudden exit. I noted that I had made one mistake but took full accountability and tried to make it right. I pointed out how their reasons kept changing. First, it was them being busy, then my mistake, and finally my being too much. I also communicated how they continually blamed me for everything that transpired. I told them that I felt erased, rewritten as a stranger. They read the message. They bombarded my phone with messages but deleted them all. They called me, which I did not answer since I was busy, then blocked me. I decided this was over. I was done. I stood up for myself. However, a month later, I got drunk, and during an emotional rant with my friend about a previous ex who had abused me, feeling cornered, I texted Abyss that night because I remembered the safety they made me feel. I contacted them on another application, simply asking why they had blocked me. They responded, "You know why, because you kept questioning my choices despite my telling you to let go." In a drunken state, I replied with care and reignited feelings, telling them that I was not questioning them. I cared and wanted them to know that if they were conflicted, I still did not want to give up on them and would fight for them instead of running away. They replied lol and blocked me once more. I lashed out once, but every time I attempted to rebuild, to offer kindness, to take accountability, I was met with silence, rejection, or emotional punishment. I was blamed, I was dismissed. I was told it was just another date despite everything we shared. None of my efforts were acknowledged, none of the things I did, waiting, being understanding, or giving space despite the toll it took on me, were recognized even once. Everything became, "You lashed out, you are bad, so I am leaving." What hurt me more was that we shared so much about our boundaries and needs, and they knew exactly how and what hurt me, yet they still did it. This situation reminded me somewhat of the last time I was emotionally abused. Was I the abuser, or was I simply discarded for caring too much? If anyone has been through something similar or has any insights, I would greatly appreciate your thoughts. I genuinely do not know what transpired with Abyss. They made no effort to communicate properly until the situation escalated, or even to meet in person to bring things to a conclusion. Summary: I connected deeply with someone who exhibited strong emotional intimacy, chemistry, and discussed future plans. After 2 intense dates, they requested total silence while they were away for 2 months. I waited patiently, respected their space, and hoped we would reconnect. However, when they returned, they ghosted me once more. When I finally requested clarity, I received a cold response, was blamed for lashing out, and told it was over. I apologized and tried to rebuild, but they minimized everything we had shared and eventually blocked me. I am left confused, blamed, and discarded after showing up with honesty, patience, and care. I am trying to understand. Did I ruin this, or did I get strung along and punished for feeling too much?